Thanks for joining us today, Nick. I'm the founder and CEO of Zeebu. It would be amazing if you could do a bit of background on yourself as well.
Yeah, for sure. Great to be here. I'm Nick. I currently lead DeFi at Fuel. Previously built treasury at Bitstamp and managed treasury with some of the, let's say, biggest protocol in the space.
Amazing. So, to quickly dive into, your experience with crypto, overall, what your journey has been, how long you've been in it, and what you got in it, what got you in it, would be great to know.
So essentially, I'm in from 2017.
Okay.
I joined with some of the, let's say, part-time, with helping some of the project with tokenomics. That was my initial, let's say, entering the space around tokenomics. I have a finance math background, so it's kind of a modeling stuff. And then back in 2019, I joined full-time. As I said, Bitstamp. I was one of the guys who built the treasury department from the ground up then. And then, I spent roughly 4 years and moved on, advised a lot of projects, helped them build like tokenomics from a very early stage project, like practically from a business model, build the whole tokenomics up to a token launch. And with some bigger projects as well, like doing token optimization, treasury management, how to optimize the liquidity and all that comes with it. So, and lately joined Fuel, where I helped them on the DeFi side, so scaling the DeFi side, helping the project launch tokenomics around projects, and trying to keep the ecosystem sustainable, let's say, which I see it's one of the biggest issues in the crypto space, right?
Right. No, I mean, at Zeebu, we're all about sustainability and actual consumptive use. The tokenomics and the use of the token needs to make sense, where it's not just speculation based. There needs to be a natural consumer, whether the market's going up, sideways, or downwards. Someone should be buying the token because they actually need to use it for something. So, on that, let me quickly give you some background on why I entered crypto as a whole. So I used to be, pure TradFi, securities trader between 2018 and 2020. So in 2020, when the market crashed, I believe March 11th, I picked up a lot of long positions within the securities market. Had a little bit of free time on my hands. It was also COVID, as you know. So I was stuck up in my house, had a bit of free time on my hands, read the Bitcoin white paper, found it interesting. Bitcoin was at $3,000 at that point, so I bought a little bit. Bought some Ethereum as well. But, what also interested me were altcoins that were building on top of ETH and altcoins in general. What were the things that were deriving value for them? So a token that caught my eye was XRP at that time, which makes sense, as you know about Zeebu. So I looked at XRP's fundamentals. I was very, very impressed because I only looked at the online information at that time. I understood that they were using it as a Forex exchange kind of vehicle amongst banks. But I thought to myself, they still have banks as intermediaries, which is still inefficient in one way, shape, or form, right? So why not connect businesses directly on a decentralized layer, where all of their counterparties are KYC, KYB, and AML compliant, but at the same time, they're pretty much doing peer-to-peer transactions. So that was kind of the ideation of Zeebu, and why we started it. We understood that telecom carriers were one of the industries that really, really needed it, because margins have come down all the way from 30% in the early 2000s to like 4 to 5% now. The last thing they can afford is bank fees, foreign exchange fees, especially in the unemerged markets, and most importantly, the time value, which is like 3 days in emerged markets, 6 to 16 days in unemerged markets.
Exactly.
So, it didn't have much to do with tokenomics. Why I got into crypto, it was more on the utility side and application side. But I have tried my best to keep up with, what kind of economics actually works. And that's what we based the Zeebu economics around, right? Consumptive use. Because we understood that, there's a $120 billion market out there. We're going to capture probably 48 billion of which over the next 3 years. And we needed to mint our tokens accordingly. But at the same time, in a bull or bear market, we don't want our token to have extreme reactions. Hence, if you've looked into our tokenomics, I'm not sure, you'll see that we have extreme inflation, but at the same time, we have an extreme burn cycle quarterly as well. So I'll let you jump into kind of what you find important in tokenomics, what you normally look for, how you structure it, etc.
So fundamentally, and what Zeebu already has, like, and was fundamentally for any pretty much project launching in crypto, probably 80-90% of the projects don't have this, but it's like clearly defined utility with some traction already and a working product and some, let's say, mechanisms that's already live, right? And Zeebu already has that. There's some traction behind the protocol, which obviously help you with the community, with the utility, with building the ecosystem, with attracting market participants. And that's a very, I would say, one of the strongest demand drivers. So essentially, you would need, right, in order to sustain the token price.
Yeah.
The other part is obviously the supply, right? And you have to balance out the supply somehow. In most cases, you can't really, I would say, outpace it with the demand solely, so you have to limit the supply somehow, whether through, let's say, a capped supply or through a token burn events of some sort, right? Buybacks, burn events, and you try to keep it like in line with the demand. And by like managing the supply and demand side, you try to keep it sustainable in the long term. And usually where I see a lot of projects, right? They should more focus on defining the tokenomics, designing the tokenomics before they launch the token, right?
Yeah.
And they launch the token and they completely forgot about the tokenomics and the economy behind and how the token reacts to the market.
Right.
And I think that most of the work actually starts when you launch the token, right? You have to pretty much optimize the tokenomics going forward, manage the supply side, manage the demand side, and try to keep it, up and running. Also from the treasury perspective, what can you do with diversification? What can you do on the market making side? What can you do with the buybacks, right? And how to keep it like valuable on the markets, because a lot depends also on the general market structure, right? If the market is bad, if you're in a bear market, you can optimize it to an extent, but you still will be like in hands of the global market. But just try to survive the bear market as much as you can, and then shine in the bull market, right? And try to keep some funds.
Before we cut off, you were talking about the fundamentals of tokenomics that you normally look for, and I understand you were saying that there's a very important need of projects to constantly adapt their tokenomics with market sentiment, with the direction of the company as you pivot, right? So if you want to continue on that point, if you have anything to add.
Exactly, yeah. So essentially what I want to add is that it's always good, a lot of projects like, also from the treasury perspective, right? They spend a lot of funds during the bull market, and they're like left aside during the bear market because they don't have like any spare funds to actually inject, let's say, the capital in the token, in the ecosystem, and all this kind of stuff. So it's always to have some sort of a dry powder to inject in the black days, right? So you can, during the bear market, you can outperform the market, let's say, and you can keep the token sustainable. Of course, the token will fall as well, right? But you can try to limit it as much as possible, and then you wait for the better days, the bear market, and you can, execute it much more efficiently.
Right. So, talking about adapting your tokenomics, at Zeebu, as you know, in our phase one, we were very business development and product focused. All we really cared about was onboarding as many customers as possible, getting the business going, focusing on the fundamentals, right? Because our main fundamentals of the tokenomics and Zeebu as a, entity, as a team, we're focused on consumptive use of the token, our decentralized network, etc. So that's what our tokenomics were designed for. Now we're coming out with our own liquidity protocol in order to help us scale our efforts and launch additional services that we have in our roadmap. And of course, with market sentiment, the new technologies that we're getting every single day, and the way Zeebu is pivoting, we'll need to adapt our tokenomics in one way, shape, or form. Even when it comes to our burn mechanism, which is the Phoenix protocol, we don't have a mint protocol right now. If we added another industry like oil and gas, we would need additional tokens in circulation. So I understand exactly what you mean by adapting. But with, offline, me and you have discussed Zeebu's coming roadmap. What do you think would be some, let's say 3 revisions that Zeebu would need to do with their tokenomics, with the liquidity protocol and the governance coming out?
Yeah, so definitely, let's say, including some incentives, incorporating some incentives to attract liquidity is important, right? Because you want to have external participants or funds flowing from external participants in, right? That's one thing. Then you have to, let's say, keep the governance side alive as well, right? So the people actually interacting, and you want to have the right people actually managing the different proposals, different aspects of the protocol, right? And on the other side, of course, the supply side, which obviously already have the burn mechanism implemented, but I think it always can be adjusted, can be optimized, right, depending on the market structure and what your actual needs on the supply side are. So I would say that like this would be pretty much the main balancing things happens between the incentives that you give to the ecosystem, right, and keeping the supply, let's say, managed.
Right. So, I mean, to answer your question about to answer your statement regarding the incentives to attract liquidity to our TVL, right? Today's Zeebu's TVL's main focus is to scale the transactions on the Zeebu PSP, which is Zeebu Pay. In the past 8 months, we've done about $1.5 billion in transactions, but that was at a limit, right? We limit every single institution on our platform to only transact $200,000 per day. It's fairly low for a company.
Exactly.
But we have to do so because there's a certain amount of liquidity that you need to ensure instantaneous transactions and withdrawals. Hence, we're coming out with the liquidity protocol itself. Now, in order to incentivize all of the users in the liquidity protocol, we're actually taking fees that we collect from the businesses that use the platform, and we're dividing a chunk of that fees towards incentives directly. So that means we have consumptive liquidity coming into the Zeebu ecosystem, but it's not just tokens that we're minting out of thin air.
Exactly.
Right? So there's actual dollar value that's going back in. So that means that essentially there's someone out there that uses the service, puts in dollar liquidity into the Zeebu ecosystem, and has no intention of taking that dollar liquidity back out because they were consuming a service such as Uber, as an example. Right? You call an Uber, you pay $20 for it, you don't hope to get those $20 back because you consumed the service there. I think that's the one key thing missing in the market today. And at Zeebu, that's exactly what we're trying to share for Web3. Bring all that Web2 dollar volume into Web3.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the only way to keep it sustainable, right? Because you're minting tokens out of thin air and incentivizing people to actually use your products by newly minting tokens. Essentially, the price will keep dropping, right? Because it's like the basic of economics, right? It's supply demand side, and you keep increasing the supply, and the price will drop. But if you already generate revenue, like some sort of significant revenue, as you guys do, it's much easier to actually sustain, and you can still incentivize people quite actively, right? So there's some real incentive for the people that doesn't affect your supply directly. Which is obviously the only way to go forward and to keep it sustainable in the long run. As we've seen in most of the protocols, they're pretty sustainable for the first 1 or 2 years, right? And then as soon as the supply side is high enough, or they don't have enough revenue to sustain, let's say the whole cycle, the price starts to drop, right?
Right.
So that's the
That's the way we design the Zeebu tokenomics, right? Whether the market's going upwards, downwards, or sideways, we have a national consumer, which is the telecom carriers. They'll go to the exchanges, they'll buy the token, they'll consume their service, and they'll be done with Zeebu for that day.
And if you're profitable, right, it's much easier to actually keep everything afloat, right? Even from the, let's say, purely treasury perspective. Of course, you share the revenue with the ecosystem, with the participants, to keep them engaged, to keep them to keep the funds flowing in. But you could also employ different treasury strategies to keep the token afloat in the, let's say, during the bear market, during the bad times, right? You can inject the capital to do some sort of buybacks. You can try to keep the token alive, right? Even through that kind of mechanisms, which obviously is still sustainable because you're generating revenue, right? If you were, let's say, generating revenue, you keep spending the funds that you, I don't know, from your investors, for example, or I don't know, dumping the token on the market. You can do this to the, let's say, to the infinity, right? You will run out of funds eventually. So that's the main advantage I see, right? There are not a lot of protocols in the crypto space that are 100% sustainable in the terms of the revenue, right? There are some DeFi protocols, but that's pretty limited, I would say.
Right. So I actually call it the milk and cream methodology, because anytime, let's say you have fresh milk, you just took it out of a cow, it just sits there, it forms cream on top. Right. So the cream would be, in this case, the speculative layer that traders create. They say, okay, this token is worth this much, but the milk would be the consumptive layer. So every token has a bare consumptive value. This just depends what the ratio is. I believe to stay successful as a protocol, as a token, you always have to have more milk than cream.
Exactly.
So when the cream goes away, you still have the milk, and it's not a big fall.
Exactly.
That's the way I look at it. But thank you for joining us today, Nick.
Thanks for having me.
I would love to continue working with you, and hopefully have you on the governance council for Zeebu one day.
Likewise. Very excited for the project.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Thanks.